Good evening. I'm Minnie Gillespie. Welcome to the African American History Museum program celebrating the National Women's History Month. The theme for 2022 is Women Providing Healing, Promoting Hope. This theme is both a tribute to the ceaseless work of caregivers and frontline workers during this ongoing pandemic, and also a recognition of the thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided both healing and hope throughout history. Women as healers harken back to ancient times. Healing is the personal experience of transcending suffering and transforming it to wholeness. The gift of hope spreads light to the lives of others and reflects a belief in the unlimited possibilities of this and future generations. Together, healing and hope are essential fuels for our dreams and recovery. Today, we are especially reminded of the importance of healers and caregivers who are helping to promote and sustain hope for the future. This evening, we have 4 SIU School of Medicine students, very talented and accomplished medical students who represent in their own way how this year's theme relate to their lives and experiences, as well as the impact it has on the community and especially women. This evening we have Felicia, we have Beret, we have Kamaria, and we have Catherine. And they are 3rd and 4th year medical students, and they will present in that order. So if you guys want to go ahead and get started with your presentation, you can go ahead and do that.
All righty, so good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so my name is Kamaria Coleman. I will be getting our talk started tonight. So our topic is women providing healing and promoting hope. So a lot of times this past 2 years have been spent on talking about the COVID pandemic. We all know by now that it affects Brown and Black people more than other races. And so honestly, talking about COVID can be a bit of a drag. So what we want to do tonight is talk about some of the issues surrounding COVID, but mainly we're going to focus on this hope and healing aspect. And our hope is that when you leave this presentation, you will be filled with some renewed spirit and understanding of different type of wellness, how you can take that into your life. So next slide, please. So here, this is and also we just want to give homage to all the frontline workers who have been working diligently the entire pandemic, everyone from people who work at the grocery store to Uber drivers to anybody who has been out while other people have had the privilege to stay and work from home and different things like that. So before I get started, we're going to go around and before we dive deeper into our program, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more, and then our colleagues will introduce ourselves, and then we'll get to our agenda. So as already previously stated, my name is Kamaria Coleman. I'm a 3rd year medical student interested in, we'll be applying to surgery.
My name is Felicia. I'm a current 4th year medical student, will soon graduate in May, and I'll be conducting my research year at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota for ENT.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bray Madden. I am also a 4th year medical student to be graduating this year. I'm completing my psychiatry training at Duke University Hospital, which is located in North Carolina.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Green. I'm a 3rd year medical student from Houston, Texas, and I'll be applying in family and community medicine for the match of 2023.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to briefly talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, and then we're going to delve off and talk into different types of wellness So here we have spiritual, physical, mental, and professional wellness. Those are just 4 kinds of wellness. Of course, there are so many different aspects to what is it to be well? What is it to be healthy? So we'll be talking about some of those things tonight. And then we're going to end with a discussion, which is really a question and answer session for you ladies. So next slide, please.
So I want you all who's on this call to sit back and reflect on the date of March 15, 2020. Where were you when you received that call, or you were watching the news, or you received the email that the United States will be shutting down due to COVID-19? Did you find yourself panicking on the phone with your loved ones? Did you find yourself running to the grocery store to buy all the toilet paper and food because no one knew what was expected next? We all know that COVID-19's pandemic has exposed the social determinants of health inequities, and systemic injustices towards our Black and Brown communities around the world. We have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic, with statistics showing that Blacks or African Americans were 2.4 times more likely to be severely hospitalized. We were 1.7 times more likely to experience death from COVID-19 compared to the affluent culture or our Caucasian people. We had to give a huge congratulations for our caregivers and frontline healthcare workers who dedicated their time to patients, for they could not have physically quarantined because their services were desperately needed. As we all know, we're in the state where our numbers are declining. It's important to still do our parts. Mask mandates have been lifted. We're gathering again. We're having fun, but we still must remember to remain safe. So now the decision and the talk is COVID-19 has happened. We're all tired of talking about it. The next step is learning, how do we provide healing and hope to our community, especially our Black and Brown women? Next slide.
Definitely. Thank you for that handoff, Bray. So I will be discussing spiritual wellness. Our 2 questions here really are, what is spirituality? What do you guys think? What does spirituality mean? Oh, audience participation, please. Okay, I'm gonna ask Catherine, what do you think? What is spirituality?
Spirituality is that like kind of going to church, connecting with like a higher source.
Okay, all right, I'll take it. And okay, we have Valerie. She says belief in a higher power. I like it, Valerie. All right. So Beret, what is religion?
So I believe that religion is something that we practice. So reading the Bible, congregating, our church, more of the acts or the actions that follow believing in a higher power.
Okay, definitely. So, let me get a show of hands. Who thinks that spirituality is the same as religion? Let me scroll. I see a lot of head checking, so no. Okay, so raise your hand if you think spirituality is different from religion. Yes, head nodding, very good. And then also Valerie says that religion is ritual participation. Also, I think you guys looked up some definitions. I'm done with my talk. I'm just kidding. Alrighty, so next slide. So I really like this demographic. We're going to be breaking down some of the differences between spirituality over here, religion over here. But as you can see, they both do have some things in common. So one definition of spirituality is that it is being connected to the human spirit. I don't think that definition does a good job of explaining anything about spirituality. So for me, the definition I came up with is spirituality is being connected. What that is connected to just depends on you as a person. It might be feeling connected to the universe. It might be feeling connected to a higher power. It also might be feeling connected to God. So this is where religion comes in. Religion, you can think of it more as like the do's and don'ts, a rule book to life, if you will. Usually comes with a manual. Most religions have religious texts, such as the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, and so on. So those are some of the differences between spirituality and religion. But ultimately, both of those things can be a part of your spiritual wellness, how you are choosing to cultivate a connection with something outside of yourself to help you understand, cope, and go through life, amongst the many other benefits of religion. And so that's why I really like this demographic here, because it shows that spirituality and religion do have things in common. Next slide, please. So when we talk about stress, we think about life being super, super overwhelming. And actually, there's been a lot of studies done about Black people, Black women specifically, and our relationship to religion and spirituality. So why are these things even being studied? Why are people spending their time looking at stuff like this? Well, some things that these studies have found is that Black people in America, typically speaking, have more stress than some of our other counterparts. Some of the things these studies have found: Black people are more likely to experience higher levels of inadequate housing, violent victimization. That means when Black people are involved in some type of a crime or something happens to them, it's more likely to be violent. So instead of just being stopped at a traffic stop, that traffic stop might end in death or someone being beaten. That's what violent victimization means. Black people are more likely to experience higher levels of discrimination, higher levels of childhood physical and sexual abuse, more likely to work shift work, and also more likely to be in poverty. So taking your attention here to shift work and poverty, those things are very important, because now we're talking about stress also affecting our health physiologically, which Felicia is going to talk to us way more about that. But just know that this does not set you up for a healthy atmosphere. And so when you take all these things together, we have emotional stress, all the stress from being Black, living in America. Now our diseases come in. Black people have increased risk of several types of chronic disease, including, excuse me, type 2 diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, more likely to have heart attacks, heart disease, and cancer. So we're overwhelmed now and depressed, but I have good news. Next slide, please. So this is actually my favorite slide of the presentation. This slide simply has two letters: but God. And so this is where our spiritual wellness comes in. We're overwhelmed. We're Black in America. We have all these different problems. We even have research telling us all the things that we should be stressed out about, but God. And so look here, we have three different images. In this image here, we have these waves which are crashing down, representing the stresses of life, the poverty, the systemic racism, all those things. But here in the background, you have this calm, peaceful sky, and that can represent your connection to spirituality, what grounds you to get through life. And that also takes us over here to this picture, this mountain. This mountain can represent a lot of different things. It can represent things that are hard in your life, hardships that you have to overcome, things that you have overcome, or it can also represent the top, getting over something, looking to what's next. And so both of these pictures do a really great job of illustrating some. My churchgoers out here, anybody go to church? Head nods. Anybody only Christers, only go on Christmas and Easter? You still go to church. We love you for that. So two Bible verses that are kind of famous in churches are Psalms 121, 1-2, which says, I will lift my eyes up to the hills from which comes my help. My help comes from the Lord. And hopefully from these two images here, you get that, because both images are linked to the sky, which in a lot of religious texts and pictures is the sky, close to the heavens, close to God. And then lastly, this images also remind me of the famous Psalm 23. We could all recite it here, but we won't for the sake of time, but we'll just say the first verse. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So here we have the images, we have what's going on, but the Lord is my shepherd. So really quickly, next slide, we're going to talk about some historical figures. So here we have Mary McLeod Bethune. So she was basically a boss. She did a lot in the 20th century. She was a Christian, an educator, philanthropist, a humanitarian, a civil rights activist. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. She founded so many things. One thing that she founded was the National Council of Negro Women. She was also an advisor to Franklin D. Roosevelt on Black issues. She was a part of the group that helped founded the United States chapter of the United Nations. Let me say that again. She was part of the group that founded the United States chapter of the United Nations. How amazing is that? And also, she was a huge educator. She founded a private school that would go on to become a historically Black college and university, Bethune-Cookman University. So if you don't know much about her, I encourage you to take a look at her. Then next slide. Then we have Sojourner Truth. So many things to say about this amazing Black woman. She was an evangelicist, an abolitionist, a women's rights activist, but also importantly, she was a preacher. And her most famous speech, Ain't I a Woman, was actually a sermon. She's one of the only cases I could find where a Black woman, excuse me, sued a white man and won. Her son was taken away from her when he was 5 years old, and she was actually able to get back custody of her son. Only case I know of that happened. She also recruited soldiers, Black soldiers, to the Union Army. She tried to enforce the 40-acre and a mule policy, even when that was being overturned. So she did a lot. If you don't know a lot about her, I also encourage you to look her up. So next slide, my last slide. So what can you do? What is spiritual wellness and what does it mean to you? Hopefully by the end of this talk, you've gathered some things like what actually is spirituality? What is religion? What do those things mean to me? Those are some things that you can think about later. And I just want to say that there's no one way or right way for you to practice those things and what it means in your life. So here we talk about a couple different things: connecting with others around you, connecting to whatever higher power, whatever that is for you. Those are parts of cultivating your spiritual wellness. And also we talked about stress. So identifying what things stress you out. How can you attack them if you know that they're coming up? Because stress, ultimately, no matter what age we are, will come up. Lastly, most important things, always ask for help. Whenever we get into cycles of self-isolation and just want to be alone, that's when problems usually get worse. You never have to do it all alone. And lastly, stay encouraged. Build a sisterhood of people around you, stay encouraged, and also remember, but God. Thank you all, and I'll pass it to my colleague, Beret.
I think she meant her colleague, Felicia.
I'm so sorry, my colleague, Felicia.
Thank you so much, Kamaria, for speaking about physical wellness. Just as she had mentioned earlier, spiritual wellness is pretty much one of many different aspects of wellness that encompasses the body as a whole. And so I'm going to talk about, when we talk about wellness, we're probably going to talk about one that's pretty obvious, and that is physical wellness. So again, engaging into the audience, what is your idea of physical wellness? What do you think of? And then my colleagues, if you can, read the chat, because I can't read it if anyone puts it in me.
It's like working out and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Movement. We have to kind of always be moving. I see someone says exercise. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? Exercise, movement. That's good. That's good.
What about like sleep hygiene, like getting enough sleep at night, different things like that?
Right, exactly. Another thing we tend to forget is that, we want to move our body, but at some point our body needs to, take some time to recover from the full day's work. So sleep is also very important. All right, so that's good. So anyone else? I think I heard the mic on the board.
I was
No?
just gonna say nourishment, another thing.
Nourishment. Okay, yeah, exactly. So again, just like how we work out, just like how we use sleep to replenish our body, we also need some form of nutrients or physical stuff that our body can use to also replenish as well. So that's also really good. And so yeah, like when I think of physical wellness, someone said like nourishments, like eating healthy, so meal prepping, you know, vegetables and grains. Another thing you can do, you can monitor your weight. That could be weight loss or weight gain, counting calories. Just like everyone has already mentioned, some form of physical activity, dancing, hiking, working out, fitness. But the one thing surprising that most people have not mentioned or talked about was diseases and conditions, you know, medications, doctor's visits, labs, and imaging. And then if you see, there's just so much more that encompasses all of that. Family history, bowel cleansing, body wraps. We have physical therapy, water acrobats, teas and supplements. It gets so much more difficult to kind of focus in on like what part of physical wellness do I want to focus on. But today I'm going to focus on diseases and conditionings only because physical wellness can really be truly overwhelming. When we get hit with the idea of how we view our physical health, sometimes we get sick before we even know we're going to get sick. Sometimes we're not in the mindset of thinking about how we can prevent ourselves from getting sick. And it could be in a context, just like how Kamari had mentioned, in the form of stress. When we're very, very stressed, we don't really understand that sometimes our bodies cannot handle that prolonged amount of stress, and it leads to then having to talk about diseases and conditions such as high blood pressure, diabetes, high lipid, high cholesterol, and high fat, things that we may not necessarily consider. And just like how it's happening to us as individuals, is also happening within our community, whether it be our brothers and sisters, mother and father, friends, neighbors, close ones. So it can get pretty overwhelming. And so I want to talk about, where do we first begin? So the first thing I want you guys to do is, when you're thinking about physical wellness, list all of your problems, everything that comes to mind, just like that. So whether it be from eating, how to eat healthy, how to change or alternate your diet, or alternatives to your diet. When it comes to losing weight, whether you thought that you wanted to lose weight or you're losing weight without intention. Physical activities. Today I want to work out, but my knees are killing me. My back is really giving me some issues. Or even some diseases or unknown. You have a family history of cancer. You know that your sister has had some issues with the blood. List all of those concerns and then prioritize which ones are the top 2 or 3 that are most important to you. Because when you go to your first doctor's visit, these are the things that you're going to primarily discuss. Although we have a lot of different concerns, it's unfortunate to say, but doctor's visit is a very short period of time, and it can even get very overwhelming to discuss everything that we all have. We all seem to have a bother of. So really picking 2 or 3 that's most important to you will help to stratify the conversation you have with your healthcare worker. Also, don't forget, what about some medications, whether it be prescribed or over the counter, and even some home remedies as well. I know I was talking to my colleagues yesterday, and there are just so many different things. Back home, for me, garlic is one of the biggest home remedies that we have. When we do garlic, forget over the counter medications and any other prescribed medications. Garlic pretty much does the body good. So don't forget to list those. While at your physical appointment, be sure to ask questions. We as physicians and everyone in healthcare value patient autonomy, and that's pretty much owning your own health status and also staying on top of it. The more confident you are understanding how your body works, what the diseases and conditions that you have, and then how it may present when you're having symptoms, the easier it is to have the conversation with your physician, especially when you may be intimidated in deciding what options you have to treat them. So make sure you ask any questions that you have about what the disease looks like, what the management is for treating your disease, and if there's anything that you should worry about concerning spreading it to your family or any family history that you knew of, and if that's something that you want to check to make sure that you are okay, that you are aware that this may or may not happen to you. Next thing, also at the end of your visit, be sure to also set some goals. At the time of your your healthcare visit, they may have you get some labs done, get some imaging done. There's a way for you to track all of those labs and documents. And if it's not by physical paper that you can request from your doctor's office, you can also access it through the patient portal. For example, here at SIU, most patients are able to access their patient portal called Follow My Health. And so that's a way where you can see all the labs that have been taken, all the results that come back with your labs, some documentation that your physicians may have for you, and also a list of all the medications that you're on. And then before your next visit, which can be within weeks, it can be within months, it can even be the next year if you are considered healthy, make note of any new or any recurrent symptoms. So if you have chronic back pain, if you found that taking Tylenol alleviates your chronic back pain, make note of that. If you realize that after taking Tylenol for a prolonged time and you're still having chronic back pain, make note of that. Tylenol no longer works for my back pain. That way, when you go into your next visit, you have alternatives to discuss with your physicians. And then last but not least, advocate for those who are hesitant, who have some form of hesitancy in healthcare. There historically has been a lot of mistrust in the African-American community, specifically stemming from the civil rights movement, the Tuskegee experiment, incarceration experiments. There's a lot that gives forces us to not be able to trust our physicians, especially those who don't look like us or don't have any relatability to us. If there's a physician or a healthcare worker that you trust, maybe bring in your neighbor and your close community and have them talk to that trusted healthcare worker so that it can give them also some form of confidence and some form of patient autonomy when it comes to addressing their healthcare. Any delay in your health makes you more susceptible to diseases and also incurable cancers as well. One thing I want to talk about is is our ability to survive. And this is going to be a story from Dr. Alexia Gaffney. She's a triple board certified infectious disease specialist, an internist, and also a pediatrician. At the age of 37, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and had to undergo one of the most radical managements for breast cancer. That's removing both of her breasts. She had to go through chemotherapy and also radiation therapy. Through their experience with cancer, she uses this to create healing pathways. She uses this to create healing pathways to help others.
Sounds like you're in crisis. I won't call. I won't talk. Oh, okay.
So she uses this to help others achieve total health, wellness, mind, body.
What's up?
And so one second, guys.
Oh.
All right. I forgot I was the host. Okay. And so her reasons. So I bring Dr. Gaffney up because as a physician, she's able to relate to patients who have chronic illnesses and diseases. And this is one thing that can also tie in and increase more trust between patients. Sure, she is an African-American woman, but just like at many physicians, there are those who go through their own personal experiences with some form of disease and illness. And if they themselves don't experience it, they know close ones, and they also know their patient community who do so as well. And so having Dr. Gaffney and other physicians who have a bit more of understanding of how to holistically understand a patient's understanding of their body makes healing for physical wellness a bit more accomplishable than imagined. And so now COVID-19 is a bit, slightly not really behind us, but we're slowly crawling out of that isolation and quarantine period. How do we get back on track? If you have yet to do any of your annual visits from the last time, because it's very encouraged for you to get annual visits with your primary care physician, I encourage you to do so. This will at least make sure that you understand what your current your health status look like, what is your blood status, what are also your conditions and illness statuses as well. And then concerning preventative health, we as women, we are encouraged to get pap smears, especially during our reproductive period. And if you're past that reproductive period, African Americans are at an increased rate of getting breast cancer. So mammograms are greatly important. Tell your male colleagues, your male friends, your husbands, that a prostate check is also just as important as well. These ones can definitely can go very prolonged and missed until symptoms occur. And by the time symptoms occur, it's usually at a stage where more radical treatments have to be done. So the earlier you check for your health status, the easier it will be to treat and manage diseases and conditions when found at a benign status. And the last but not least, by the time you hit the age of 50 or at the age of 40, if you have a family history of colon cancer, colonoscopies are very important. We do know of several people, especially during the COVID time, who had passed away from colon cancer. And again, because like these preventative checks have been missed. So please do not avoid getting this preventative health. And then last but not least, we talked about physical activity is one of the first things that comes to our mind when it comes to physical wellness. So if you have a medical condition and you want to start physical activity, be sure you talk to your doctor to do so. That way they can give you some form of alternatives or even remedies when you have symptoms after working out. Because ideally, you should be exercising a minimum of 30 minutes per day. And this, the exercise can vary from doing, like we said, dancing. You could be just walking around your block for at least 30 minutes. I know colleagues in the past have had competitions about who can get the most steps. These are good motivators to get at least 30 minutes of physical activity per day. And so to remember COVID-19 a little bit, we know Dr. Susan Moore. She was a family medicine physician. In November 2020, she was hospitalized with the diagnosis of COVID pneumonia and then passed away a month later. I bring Dr. Susan Moore to validate the concerns about health disparities and also the feelings and sentiments about those who are truly hesitant to go and visit their doctors. In the ER, it can be very intimidating, especially when physicians are going in and out of the room and keeping you waiting, or even in the OR where you are now forced to have to do a surgical resection or even surgical treatment, and you're unsure what that even looks like. You may even have like family members who have gone through this and they did not have a good experience with this at all. And this is what happened to Dr. Susan Moore. She unfortunately was not given equitable care when it came to her health. And many of the staff sadly were intimidated by her knowledge. I encourage you to not be intimidated, to not have low confidence when talking about your disease. You are the one who knows it much more better than any other person. You live with it every day. You see it every day. Even your close friends are telling you that you look a bit more pale, or you don't seem like your usual self. It may be very overwhelming, as I mentioned earlier, and it may be very stressful. But the health for ourselves is community-based. Our culture is very community-based. So lean onto your friends, lean onto your trusted colleagues in your community as well when discussing the steps that you want to take for your physical health. That also includes your mental health as well. So I end my presentation here, and I want to pass on the mental health portion to my colleague, Beret.
Thank you so much, Felicia. Well-needed information about physical health. So before I start going through this journey, I want to announce to everybody this is a trigger warning. We are going to talk about some things that's in-depth, sexual abuse, etc. So just work with me. If it's at any time that you need to take a break, walk away from the computer, do so. I'll open that up. So I'm going to be discussing mental health, but I want to take you a walk through someone's life. I was born into poverty on January 29th, 1954 in Mississippi, where I resided on a farm with my grandmother. I was constantly beaten for the slightest reasons: spilled water, broken glass, inability to keep quiet. I was whooped. Witnessing domestic violence at a young age, my grandmother and I slept in a bed together with a chair underneath the doorknob and 10 cans around that chair. I was always listening for the cans or what would happen if the doorknob moved in the middle of the night. My grandfather beat my grandmother. Grandma became ill, and I was sent north to live with my mother and two half brothers in an extremely poor and dangerous neighborhood in Milwaukee. The night I arrived, the lady who lived with my mother took one look at me and said, "She'll have to sleep on the porch." My mother said, "All right." I finally received my first bed and bedroom at the age of 7. What a joyous moment. 9 years old was my first experience of sexual abuse. While babysitting my younger siblings, I was raped from my 19-year-old cousin. And as time went on, a family friend and an uncle joined in on the abuse. I eventually became pregnant at the age of 14. I hid my pregnancy for several months until my swollen ankles and belly gave me away. I went into labor and my baby boy died 2 weeks later. I have named him. I named him Cannon because Cannon means new land, new life. After years of bad behavior, I was sent back to live with my father in Nashville. My father saved my life. He provided guidance, structures, rules, and books. I was 19 years old, a sophomore at Tennessee State University, when I became the first African-American Nashville news co-anchor. In 1976, I moved to Baltimore and later became co-host of Baltimore's People Are Talking. In 1985, the show was renamed after me, and it became a clear turning point in my life. A major acting career followed me, and I was named Woman of Achievement by the National Organization of Women. I am a philanthropist, American talk show host, television producer, actress, and author. There are many people in this world that had to overcome countless obstacles to achieve what they have today. Can anybody on this call right now just tell me whose story I talked about or ran through? Any ideas? I can't see the chat as well.
Oprah
Yes.
Winfrey.
Perfect. Oprah. So a lot of people see Oprah and they see this successful woman today, but not realizing all of the struggles that she had to endure with her life. She's became extremely honest about her life stories and her struggles with mental health. Now, whatever feelings you may have towards Oprah, whether that's positive or negative, she represents turning adversity into triumphs in mental wellness. Next slide, please. So when we speak about mental wellness, people think, what is it? So there's a big definition that I put on the slide that you all can read. But to me, I just feel like it's an internal source that helps us think, feel, connect, and function. It's an active process that helps us build resilience, grow, succeed, and most of all, flourish. Next slide. So I truly believe that we cannot have a discussion about mental wellness if we have never talked about mental illness. So on the 2 slides, I have put the most common mental health illnesses that we all see as medical students, health professionals. That is depression and anxiety. You can look at any of these squares on the screen or scroll through your participant list, and you wouldn't actually know who is actually dealing with depression or anxiety, because it's one of those things that we can actually show the world what we want to portray. So unlike other things, whether that's physical wellness or spirituality, your actions kind of dictate whether somebody knows where you are. But it's so easy to hide depression and anxiety. So just some certain symptoms, just to make it medical terminology for you all, but we're going to focus on hope and healing, and that's the important part. Depression, you could have increased sadness, crying, increased or a loss of sleep, weight loss or weight gain, just feeling very hopeless, guilty, etc. And then for most of us, what we think of depression, we think of the far extremes, and that is when somebody no longer wants to live on this earth, they experience suicidal ideation. And then when we talk about anxiety, we talk about the feeling of fear, of dread, or just that uneasy feeling where you don't know what's going on, whether that's excessive worrying, difficulty sleeping, concentrating. And this can even have some physical manifestations, such as like shortness of breath, your heart is racing, just many different symptoms. But next slide. We talked about mental health illnesses. We talked about mental wellness. I want hope, I want healing, I want to achieve the ultimate mental wellness. What does that look like? So the first bullet point that I have on the slide is truth. What I believe the truth is that your value drives your commitment. Who are you? Through our own process of self-discovery and listening to our inner self, we become clear about what our actual beliefs are. And it's important that once you become aware of those, you can fully commit to something, and that will help you with your mental wellness. Next question that I ask everybody, what is your framework for living? Find your own true voice. In a world where we are trying to provide hope and healings to others, it is important to make sure we understand, listen, observe not only our true voice, but every person that we interact with, their values and inspirations, because that can become a learning experience for us. What is your vision? I always say I want to live in a life where I'm always forward looking. We have to learn to spend more time envisioning our future instead of what's in front of us. I'm only 28 years old and I feel like my mind shift is still changing, but as a young adult, we hear the song YOLO by Drake, etc. But we always say we're living for the moment. I'm living day by day. But I challenge us all to live in the future. We have to look beyond what's in front of us and what's existing and imagine the exciting possibilities in the future. So I ask anybody to answer this question. What is the difference between a project manager and a CEO?
CEO is in charge of like everything.
I agree. Yeah, everyone knows that. Okay, CEO, they're the big boss. You want to become the CEO. But if we look at it in regards to mental wellness, when you think of a project manager, they have a project. That project can span 3 to 4 months, 5 months at the most. But their idea is, how do I get this project from point A to the end goal of point B? When you look at a CEO, they're in charge of the entire institution or facility that they're running. So they're thinking about what's going to be my business in the next 10 years. How am I going to produce the most money that this company can produce in the next 10 years? They're focusing on the horizons. I charge us all to be CEOs of our lives and not just project managers. I'm not looking for what's going to happen next week or the next day. I'm looking for 10 years out, because in that case, you're working on your mental wellness and you're envisioning the whole aspect, your authentic self that you can become. We hear a lot about what is your insight. I know all the medical students on our psychiatry rotation, we hear the term insight, poor insight, impaired insight. But what does that actually mean? Insight means exploring and understanding your past experiences. I recently read a book and they said the central theme in life is not about what happened to you this morning while you were making breakfast or you were running late to the job. It's about our experiences, our traumas, our situations that have been rooted with us for a long time. So I want to ask each and every one of you, what has been haunting you? What life situations are persistent? What keeps coming back again and again? What is the story that you find yourself that you have to keep retelling? Those are the things in life that we need to explore and truly understand to receive the ultimate mental wellness. Last but not least, you cannot do it alone. Human connection matters. And I'm going to say that again. In a world of COVID, when we were separated, we cannot do it alone. Human connections matter. So whether that human connections mean to you seeking help, whether that's through therapy, which that says my future job, a psychiatrist, you want to know what people have to say about you. But above that, you want to let them help you become strong and capable to achieve your ultimate mental wellness. So in conclusion, it is important to understand that our mental well-being helps us strive and succeed, but it also helps us with our professional lives and our wellness.
Thank you, Bray, and thank you, Kamari and Felicia as well. So, wow, I don't know about you ladies, but I definitely feel inspired. So basically what we're doing this evening is talking about different forms of wellness. And I'm sure you all know there's a plethora of different forms of wellness. And we're namely talking about 4. And the 3 that we've already discussed, namely spiritual wellness, physical wellness, mental wellness, they all have a link and they can all tie into one thing. And that is they can be represented in the home as well as in the workplace. Namely, they can be professional wellness. So before I continue on, can someone tell me, what is professional wellness to you? What does this mean? Anybody, any takers? So it's okay. It's okay. I kind of expected a little bit of silence with this question because I indeed had to look it up as well. So next slide, please. I'll define it for us. It is the ability to achieve a balance between work and leisure in a way that promotes health. It's a sense of personal satisfaction, and ultimately it's rewarding. Simply put, professional wellness is you prioritizing, well, you in every area of life in order to maintain balance and achieve purpose. So it doesn't matter what type of job you have, whether you are 4 busy medical students, 2 third years and 2 fourth years, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a lawyer, whether you are currently retired, it doesn't matter. Wherever you go on a day-to-day basis, where you spend the majority of your time Monday through Friday, that's your professional job, right? That is the job that you hold, and that is the title that you wear, or the hat that you wear during that time. However, there are many other identities that we have. For example, we're all daughters to someone. Many of us are mothers. Many of us are wives or fiancés. You kind of get the drift. Let me kind of hammer this point home with 2 women that I like to introduce to us. Next slide, please. The first of which is Dr. Ala Stanford. She's a pediatric surgeon in Philadelphia who jumped into action when she saw that Black people in her community were being disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. She saw that they didn't have enough access to testing and to healthcare, and that really bothered her. It bothered her so much that she decided to fill a van with supplies. That way she could administer these health supplies and other things that people needed to her community. She also founded Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium. So that paragraph that I just read to you all sounds pretty prestigious, right? And if you look at the left side of your screen, you see Dr. Stanford standing here in her white coat, looking very prestigious. She's standing in front of a building, probably the place where she works. She looks like she's on the job. She looks like she's somebody who holds a big title, does a lot of important things. Namely, she's in her professional element. She's on the job. Well, let me introduce you to the same person on the right side of the screen, and you'll notice that she's surrounded by loved ones. This is her wedding day where she married the love of her life, and she's surrounded by 6 of her children, 3 that she raised by herself, and then 3 that she had with her husband. So why do I have these titles? Pediatric surgeon in Philadelphia, wife and kids. Because personally, I don't see a difference between the hat that you wear professionally and the hat that you wear personally. On the job, oftentimes we're called to separate your personal life from your professional life. Ignore the phone call. Don't worry about what the kids are doing. The husband can wait. The daughter can wait, etc., because you have to focus on the job, being a doctor, being a lawyer, all the many demands that are pressed on us day by day, Monday through Friday. But I think that if we separate ourselves from who we ultimately are, or all of those other identities that we carry, we start to lose sight of who we are. After all, before Dr. Ala Stanford decided to go to medical school, she was still somebody's daughter. She was still somebody's friend. She was still somebody's maybe roommate even. She was still somebody's shoulder to cry on. So what the point that I want to get across here is don't separate your personal identities from your professional ones. Instead, let's have professional wellness in action by dwelling on our spiritual sources, by reflecting on how we can be active with that physical wellness, and by also not letting go of that mental wellness as well. Here's another example. Next slide, please. Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. She's a viral immunologist and assistant professor of immunology and infectious disease at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and the Schutzer Assistant Professor at the Harvard Radcliffe Institute since June of 2021. This young woman on a mission, who you see on the left side of your screen, was the lead scientist of the US government, which led to the development of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. She got her BS in biological sciences from the University of Maryland, and then went on to get her PhD from the University of North Carolina. So again, heavy title, right? Lead scientist, got her bachelor's degree here, PhD there, and clearly she's in her element. Personally, I love this image of her. It represents power, authority, a woman who is truly risen to the top. Now, let me introduce you to someone, namely the same person, on the right side of your screen. Well, you'll notice that this is the same woman, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who's walking down the street with her fiance as they were looking to buy a house in Boston. So the same person and the same story. On the left side, you see somebody who's professional, who possibly could have been told, hey, don't worry about answering your phone call. Your fiance can wait, mom can wait, etc. Why should we have to separate our business life from our personal life? Dr. Corbett is not just a fiance. She's not just a scientist. She's both. So let me ask you, what are the many hats that you wear? Are you a mom in addition to a leader at work? Do you have a hat that you wear at work that is daunting and you have a lot of things going on, but then you also have a lot going on at home? Don't separate the two. Instead, learn how to balance the two. Namely, are you well? And we're going to answer this question later. So here's some ways in which you can prioritize you and maintain your own safe space professionally. First off, watch your time. So what I mean by this is, let's face it, ladies, we're busy. That alarm clock goes off. I don't know about you. I hit snooze at least 3 to 4 times. And then I finally drag myself out of bed, put on some form of makeup, put on the same pants that I had on yesterday, put on this white coat and get going. Okay, maybe not the same pants, but you get the drift. Basically, we're busy. We are busy from Monday to Friday, sometimes even dragging into Saturday, and God forbid, Sunday as well. So how can we watch our time? Here's a few examples. Friday night, whenever you get off work, cut it off. 6 p.m. Say, you know what? I'm not taking this home. Tonight, I'm going to go home, have a nice bubble bath, cook myself a good dinner, have dinner with the husband, have dinner with the kids. Or maybe you say, you know what? I'm going to get my nails done tomorrow. I don't care. It's going to be my own girl's day and I'm going to relax because this is how I'm going to maintain my own safe space professionally. Yes, professionally, because what you do personally will reflect on your professional life. So watch your time. And if it's not something that you do Friday night, you can say, you know what, Saturday, I'm taking the day off and I'm going to spend time reading a book that I've really been itching to read, or catching up on that TV show that I really want to catch up on, whatever the case may be. Watch your time and make sure that you feed yourself just like you feed your job. Next, gather your troops. So we all have those people in our lives who, let's face it, has really been the wind beneath our wings. For me, it's my mom. So I'm here in Illinois, hustling through med school, and my mom is back home in Houston, Texas. And the two of us are very close, and yet I can still feel the wind beneath my wings, and that's from her. She is definitely one of my troops in my life, and I make sure that I connect with her when I can. So for you, it might be a good girlfriend from church. It might be that gym buddy. It might be somebody in your family. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's a child, etc. Don't forget the people who have kept you grounded. Don't forget the people who have supported you along your journey, where when things didn't go the way maybe you wanted them to go, or when you wanted things to happen, they were still there, side by side, step in step. Don't lose sight of your troops. The next one, and ultimately my favorite one, is remember your why. So life is hard. Anybody ever heard that? Life is hard. And unfortunately, I don't think it gets much easier as we grow older. If it does, let me know. But from what I've experienced, life comes with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of turnarounds, many detours, and just a lot of things that ultimately are unexpected, unsuspected. So remember your why. Why did you decide to go into this field? Why did you decide to take on this project? Why did you decide to be whoever you are in your place of business or in your workplace? If you reflect on these things, the things that get you going in the morning, the things that make you stay up late at night, etc., I really do think that they will propel you along your mission. It doesn't matter where your place of business is. We are all in a mission field. We're all called to do something. And oftentimes, many times, it gets hard, it gets draining, it gets very taxing. So remember your why and let that propel you through those hard times. And finally, have fun. Yes, fun, F-U-N, fun. However you can do that. Hanging out with friends, spending time with a good book, taking time to read, taking time to laugh even. Remember to have fun along life's journey. And remember that it doesn't just have to be when you leave the place of business. You can take 5 minutes whenever you're at work or on your lunch break to steal a laugh or watch a video or whatever the case may be. Ultimately, just incorporate this into your day-to-day lives. And I really do think that you'll be able to maintain that balance. So as we kind of draw a conclusion and come to the close, let's remember the spiritual wellness. Let's remember to connect with whatever spiritual source that we have. Let's remember to move our bodies, right? It doesn't have to be a marathon, but a little bit day by day is extremely important. Sleep hygiene, watching what we eat, etc. Let's make sure we don't neglect our mental health as well. This is extremely important, especially as we're still in a pandemic and oftentimes are isolated. And ultimately, let's bring all of these things together into that professional wellness. That way we can strike that balance, maintain purpose, and find that satisfaction. So with that being said, I have a question that I like us to vocalize, and that is, are you well? And with that, I'll open it up to the floor.